Good afternoon, math people. Here we go with section 3.8 of Math 0028, the U-Try problems. So letter A, this whole section is about simplifying rational expressions, which basically just means you factor the top, you factor the bottom, you cancel what you can, and whatever's left, that's your answer. Now, on letter A, you can't really factor anything because there's just one term on top and one term on the bottom. So you're just going to simplify as much as you can. So 9 over 12 they both have a common factor of 3. So if I reduce by 3, I'm going to get 3/4. Okay? Now remember your rules for exponents. When you divide, you subtract. So 3 minus 4 would give me x to the -1, which means it has to go to the bottom to become positive. So it's going to go down in the denominator with the 4. So that would be your final answer, 3 over 4x. So to me, that's not really a rational expression. I mean, it is, but it's not so much of what we're going to do in this section because we didn't do any factoring. Now, letter B, right now you cannot cancel these. A lot of people think, oh, you can just cancel. No, what you need to see is that they're opposites of each other. You have 5 on top, -5 on the bottom. -2x on top, 2x on the bottom. So when they are exact opposites, this is where you're going to factor out a -1. Okay, so exact opposites, you're going to use -1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor a -1 out of the numerator. Okay, and what that does is it completely flips the order of the terms, because if you distribute a -1 back through what I've just written, -1 times 2x is -2x, just like we started with on top. -1 times -5 is +5. So that numerator on top is also equal to what I just wrote. Okay? Keep the bottom the same, 2x minus 5. Now you can cancel those two terms because they're the same, 2x minus 5, those cancel, and your final answer is just -1. Okay, letter C. So remember, what you're going to do is you're going to factor the top, factor the bottom. The whole key to this whole chapter is to remember the F word. And the F word, my friends, especially those of you with dirty minds, is factor. Factor, factor, factor. So if you don't have a clue what to do, you factor, because it's probably going to be the right thing to do. All right, look at the top. We don't have a GCF, but we do have perfect squares. So we're going to set up FOIL. And the square root of 4 would be 2 and 2. And the square root of y squared would be y and y. And then because it's a negative there, the signs have to be opposites, plus and a minus. Now on the bottom, we have a trinomial. There's no GCF, so we're going to set up parentheses for FOIL. Put in y and y. Now I need the factors of -10 that add up to -3. Well, if you think about -10, if we try -2 and 5, or -5 and 2, -5 plus 2, that'll give me that -3 in the middle. So I put that in, -5 plus 2. So now you want to see if you have any common factors. Well, look at the 2 plus y on top and the y plus 2 on the bottom. Those are exactly the same. They are not opposites or anything crazy. They cancel exactly the way they are because they're the same thing. Okay, so they're gone. So what you have on top is 2 minus y. And sometimes WebAssign is picky about the parentheses, so it's better to be safe than sorry. I would just keep the two terms on top in parentheses and the two terms on the bottom in parentheses, just to be safe. Okay, so that's your answer right there. Now, this next one, we can go ahead and simplify the 6 over 8, and we can simplify the x and the x squared. But then look at the x minus 5 and 5 minus x. That's that same exact opposite thing again. Okay, so they are exact opposites. So what you're basically going to do, I'm going to go ahead and reduce the 6 and 8 by 2. So that's going to give me 3 over 4. Now, if I subtract the x's, 1 minus 2 is x to the -1. So I'm just writing it over there so you can see it, which means that's got to go down to the bottom to become positive. And if I factor a -1, and I'm going to factor it out of the top just so I don't lose it. That's the main thing. It doesn't matter which one you factor it out of, top or bottom. I just usually do the top because it's easier. So that's going to make the x minus 5 become 5 minus x. And I still have 5 minus x on the bottom. So now what I need to do, I can go ahead and multiply 3 times -1. So that's going to be -3 on top. But now the 5 minus x's will cancel nice and neat over just 4x on the bottom. And that's your answer. So the cool thing about this is the only thing that you're really doing is you're factoring the top, factoring the bottom, and canceling. So when people say they can't do rational expressions, it's really not rational expressions they can't do, it's still the factoring that's giving them problems. So make sure you practice on that. Alright, so E, we have y squared minus 3y plus 2 over y squared minus 4y plus 3. The number one wrong thing that people do is they want to try and cancel those y squared. Totally wrong. Factor, factor, factor. Always factor first. So the top, there's no GCF, so we're setting up FOIL, and we're going to put y and y. Now I need the factors of 2. Well, the only factors of 2 are 1 and 2, and those do add up to 3. But to get that negative, remember, the last term's positive, so you go to the middle sign. They both have to be negative. And that way you get -1 and -2 adds up to -3. Now on the bottom, there's no GCF, so we set up FOIL again, and we put in y and y. Now the only factors of 3 are 1 and 3, and those do add up to 4, but once again, the last term's positive, so we go to the middle sign. They both have to be negative. Okay, and that gives you that -4 in the middle. Now we can cancel y minus 1. Those terms cancel. So we're left with y minus 2 over y minus 3. And that's your answer. Okay. All right, letter F. Remember, the first thing you look for is a GCF. Okay, so don't go to FOIL until you've checked for that greatest common factor. So on the top, 3x is our common factor. Okay, if we factor out a 3x, that's going to leave x squared minus 4, which we're going to factor that further in just a minute. So, because I know some of you are like, but you're not done. I know. Okay, we're going to do it in a minute. Just relax. Now look at the bottom. The common factor there, 6 goes into all those, and x is your smallest exponent. So 6x is going to come out front. That's going to leave x squared. When we divide, remember, go back and divide each term by 6x. Okay. Let's see, minus 4x plus 4, because there the x's cancel on the last term. All right. So one thing I can do, because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to keep writing junk down that I don't need to, I can reduce 3/6. That would reduce to 1/2. And the x's, x divided by x, those cancel. The reason I can cancel those there is because now it's a factor. It's been written as multiplication. 3x times all that mess. 6x times all that mess. So that's why I can cancel those. Now, I cannot cancel the x squares or the 4s. Totally wrong. I need to keep factoring on the top and keep factoring on the bottom. On the top, I have perfect squares. So I'm going to set up FOIL. I have x and x. For the x squared, the square root of 4 is 2 and 2, and the signs have to be opposites. Now on the bottom, I have perfect squares on the ends, so I'm going to set up FOIL, and once again x and x, and the square root of 4 is 2 and 2, but this time, because the last term's positive, we go to the middle. The signs have to be both negative. Okay, so what cancels is an x minus 2 over an x minus 2. And they don't have to be right on top of each other. As long as one's in the numerator, one's in the denominator, you're good to go. So what you have left, on the top, don't write the 1, just write the x plus 2. That's what's in the numerator. And then on the bottom, we have 2 and x minus 2. And you just leave it in its factored form. You don't have to distribute the 2 or anything like that. All right. I think this is the last one. All right, so look at the top. so hard to not try and cancel 2n squared and 2n squared. Don't do it. Don't get into that trap. The top, we're going to try and factor that, but we're going to have to use trial and error, which is a pain in the butt sometimes, okay? So I'm going to set up FOIL. I'll write it over here so I have some room. So I need the factors of 2. I have 1 and 2, and I need the factors of 4, 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. Alright, so I'm going to put the factors of 2, 1n and 2n in the first place of FOIL. So that gives me that 2n squared. Now, I can't use 2 and 2 because the 2 can't be in the same parentheses with the 2. But I could use 1 and 4 as long as I don't put the 4 with the 2n because they would still have a common factor. So I'm going to put 4 and then 1. Now, we still don't know if it works yet or not. We have to figure out the signs. The last term's positive, so go to the middle. Both signs need to be negative. Now, before I try and go to the bottom, I need to check this because I don't even know if it's right yet or not. This is where we check the OI, the outer plus the inner. So the outer term, 1n times negative 1, is negative 1n, and the inner term, negative 4 times 2n, is negative 8n, and those add up to negative 9n. So it works, okay? Now we can factor the denominator. So once again, same thing. I need the factors of 2, which I already have, and this time I need to write down the factors of 12. I know it's a negative 12, but there's already so much to mess with here. Let's just write the numbers without the signs. It'll make it a little bit easier. So we're still going to put in 1n and 2n, okay? And I'm going to start with 3 and 4, okay, for 12. So I can't put the 4 with the 2, but I could put the 4 in the first parentheses and the 3 in the back. That still gives me the 12. 4 times 3 is still 12. Now here's the part that's hard, is that you just have to figure out the signs. Well, the last term is a negative, the negative 12. So that means my signs have to be opposites of each other. So I'm just going to guess, well, I don't know how to erase on this stupid thing. So I'm going to guess it right. I'm going to guess a negative and a positive, okay? Normally I put the positive first and then the negative, but I kind of figured it out ahead of time. So I knew that we need to put that negative first. Check the outer and the inner. The outer term, 1n times 3, would be 3n. That's the outer term. And the inner term, negative 4 times 2n, is negative 8n. And that gives me negative 5n, which is what I wanted. Okay? So, now, this is factored. We can cancel the n minus 4's. Okay? So you have 2n minus 1 over 2n plus 3. Now here's the big question. Can you cancel those 2n's? Heck no. The only thing that 2n minus 1 cancels with is another 2n minus 1. So that mess that you have there, that's your answer. So good luck with section 3.8.